You have watched it 1,000 times, the corner kick. The crowd holds its breath. The ball flies into the box. It curves, it dips, it does something the goalkeeper did not expect, and it hits the back of the net. But here is the thing nobody talks about. The goalkeeper did not just get beaten by the player. He got beaten by the ball, because every single World Cup, for over 90 years, FIFA has introduced a new ball, a new design, a new shape, a new technology, and every single time that ball has changed the game, sometimes subtly, sometimes in ways that made goalkeepers look completely helpless. Some of these balls were so revolutionary that scientists had to write research papers about them. Some were so controversial that players publicly complained before the tournament even started. And some became so iconic that you can look at a photo of one and immediately know exactly which year, which tournament, which era of football it came from. Today we are going through every major World Cup ball design in history, what made each one special, what made some of them controversial, and how this one simple object has silently shaped the biggest sporting event on the planet. Let's go, Section 1. The early era before branding, 1930 to 1950, 1930 Argentina and Uruguay. The Battle of the Ball. Let's start at the very beginning. The 1930 World Cup in Uruguay, the first ever World Cup in history. And immediately there was drama, not just on the pitch, but about the ball. Argentina and Uruguay could not agree on which ball to use for the final, so they compromised. Argentina's ball was used in the first half. Uruguay's ball was used in the second half. Argentina led 2-1 at halftime with their ball. Uruguay came back and won 4-2 in the second half. With their ball, nobody knows for certain how much the ball actually mattered. But the fact that this argument even happened tells you everything. Even in 1930, people understood that the ball was not just a ball. It was a weapon, and whoever controlled the ball controlled the game. These early balls were made of leather panels, usually 18 hand-stitched panels, and they had a rubber bladder inside. They were heavy. They absorbed water. On a rainy day, heading the ball was genuinely dangerous because it became so heavy. Footballers from that era often suffered head injuries from heading waterlogged leather balls. This was not a small issue. This was a real physical problem with the technology of the time. Say 1950, Brazil. The leather era continues. 1934 and 1938 World Cups in Italy and France used similar leather balls with minor variations. The 1950 World Cup in Brazil, famous for the Maracanazo, when Uruguay shocked Brazil in the final match, used the Super Ball T, another leather construction. These balls all shared the same basic problem, inconsistency. Each ball was handmade. Each one behaved slightly differently, and once they got wet, all bets were off. Football at this time was as much about managing the equipment as it was about skill. Section 2. The birth of the modern ball, 1954-1966, 1954, Switzerland. The rubber revolution. The 1954 World Cup in Switzerland introduced balls with a rubber casing, which was a significant step forward. The ball became more waterproof, more consistent, and lighter. This tournament is famous for the miracle of Bern. West Germany defeating Hungary 3-2 in the final, despite Hungary being arguably the greatest national team of that era. The improved ball technology meant faster, more technical football was possible. Say 1962, Chile. The Chilean ball. By the time the 1962 World Cup arrived in Chile, ball manufacturers were experimenting more aggressively with synthetic materials. The balls were becoming rounder, more consistent, and faster, but we are still in the era before the ball became a marketing product. Nobody had a brand name on the ball. Nobody was designing it for visual impact. It was purely functional. That was all about to change. This is in 1966, England. The Schlesinger Challenge 4-Star. The 1966 World Cup in England introduced the Schlesinger Challenge 4-Star, and this was a landmark moment for two reasons. First, this was the first World Cup ball to be made by a recognizable sporting brand. Schlesinger, a British company, put their name on the ball. The commercialization of the World Cup ball had begun. Second time, this was the tournament where England won their only World Cup. Geoff Hurst scored his hat trick, the controversial goal that did or did not cross the line. The ball bounced down from the crossbar, and to this day, nobody agrees on whether it fully crossed the line. The ball was round. The ball was consistent. The debate was about human eyes and slow cameras, not about the ball itself. This was progress. Simsh 3. Adidas takes over. The Icon Era begins. 1970-1986, 1970. Mexico. The Telstar. The ball that changed everything. Now we arrive at the moment that everything changes. 197 Mexico. the Telstar made by Adidas. Black and white. 32 panels, 20 hexagons and 12 pentagons. The classic football design that almost every child has ever drawn. But here is what most people do not know. The Telstar was not designed to look good on a football pitch. It was designed to look good on television. 190 was the first World Cup to be broadcast in full-color television to a global audience. And Adidas designed a ball that would show up clearly on black and white TV screens as well as color ones. The high contrast between the black pentagons and the white hexagons made the ball's rotation visible on screen for the first time. Before the Telstar, watching football on TV meant watching a white blur. You could barely see the spin on the ball, the curve of a free kick, the trajectory of a shot. The Telstar fixed this. It made the game more watchable for hundreds of millions of people around the world. The 1970 World Cup is considered one of the greatest ever played. Brazil, with Pelé, Jairzinho, Tostão, and Rivellino, won the tournament playing some of the most beautiful football in history. And the Telstar was the ball that carried every single one of those moments. The design was so perfect that Adidas used a near-identical design, called the Telstar Durlast, for the 1974 World Cup in West Germany as well. It is the most copied football design in history. When you think of a football, any football, you are almost certainly imagining a Telstar 1978, Argentina, the Tango 1978, Argentina, the military government. A controversial tournament played in a country under authoritarian rule, and a ball that was genuinely beautiful, the Tango. Adidas introduced a new design with 20 identical triads, curved shapes that created an optical illusion of 12 circles on the surface of the ball. It was still black and white, but it was more elegant, more artistic than the Telstar. The design was inspired by South American culture and football flair. The Tango was such a successful design that Adidas used variants of it for 4 consecutive World Cups, 1978, 1982, 1986. The Tango España in 1982 Spain, the Azteca in 1986 Mexico. Wait, we need to talk about the Azteca separately. 1986 Mexico. The Azteca, the first synthetic ball. The 1986 World Cup in Mexico introduced the Adidas Azteca, and this was a truly historic moment. The Azteca was the first ever World Cup ball made entirely of synthetic materials, no leather. Fully waterproof, consistent in all weather conditions, and it featured a design inspired by Aztec architecture and Mexican culture. This was the tournament of Maradona, the hand of God goal. The goal of the century. Widely considered the greatest individual goal ever scored. Maradona dribbled past 5 England players and the goalkeeper, covering more than 60 meters of pitch. He did it with a synthetic ball. A ball that was lighter, faster, and more responsive than anything that had come before. The Azteca was the future arriving in 1986. Section 4. Color, Technology, and Controversy. 1990-2006. 1990 Italy. The Etrusco Unico. The 1990 World Cup in Italy gave us the Etrusco Unico, the first World Cup ball to feature color. It had black Etruscan heads printed on a white ball, gold detailing, and a generally more artistic appearance. The 1990 World Cup was famously defensive and low-scoring. It produced the lowest goals per game average in World Cup history. Critics blamed the football. But the ball was actually quite good. The tournament's defensive nature was more about tactics than technology. So 1994, USA, the Questra America, 1994. The World Cup comes to a country that barely understands football, or soccer as they insist on calling it, the ball, the Adidas Questra, white with colorful geometric designs. The first ball designed to be visually exciting on color television. The design was meant to look dynamic, modern, futuristic. The Questra was also lighter and more responsive than previous balls. And players noticed that shots traveled faster through the air. This was the beginning of players complaining that the ball was too light or unpredictable, a complaint that would only grow louder in future tournaments. Brazil won the 1994 World Cup, beating Italy on penalties in the final. Roberto Baggio's missed penalty, one of the most iconic moments in football history. The Questra was the ball that didn't go in. So 1998, France. The Tricolore 1998, France. The host nation wins the tournament for the first time. Zinedine Zidane's 2-headed goals against Brazil in the final. 3-0. A nation goes wild. The ball, the Tricolore. The first ever multicolored World Cup ball. Blue, red, and gold patches on a white background, reflecting the colors of the French flag. It was colorful, it was bold, it looked like nothing anyone had seen before. Technically, it was also improved. The Tricolore had a new foam layer beneath the outer panels, giving it more consistent flight and better feel. Strikers loved it. 2002, Japan Korea, the FIFA Nova 2002, the first World Cup in Asia. Shared between Japan and South Korea, and one of the most controversial balls in World Cup history, the FIFA Nova gold, red, and silver, a design inspired by Asian art and culture, beautiful to look at. Absolute nightmare to play with, the FIFA Nova was significantly lighter than previous World Cup balls and had a completely new synthetic foam core that made it behave unpredictably in the air. Shots that should have gone straight suddenly swerved. Crosses that should have curved went flat. Goalkeepers had no idea what the ball would do. Ronaldo scored in the final. His 2 goals gave Brazil a 2-0 win over Germany. But throughout the tournament, players on every team were publicly complaining about the ball. The French squad was particularly vocal. Germany's goalkeeper Oliver Kahn, who had one of the tournaments of his life, still complained about the FIFA Nova's unpredictability. Sports scientists ran aerodynamic tests on the FIFA Nova and confirmed what everyone suspected. It moved differently through the air compared to previous balls. The seam pattern and reduced weight created aerodynamic instability. The FIFA Nova taught FIFA and Adidas an important lesson. Beautiful design means nothing if players cannot control the ball. 2006, Germany, the Teamgeist 4 years later. Germany 2006, Adidas introduces the Teamgeist 14 curved panels instead of 32. A rounder ball than had ever been produced. The fewest panels since the leather era, and it was faster. Much faster. Germany 2006 is remembered as one of the most entertaining World Cups in recent memory. High-scoring games. Spectacular goals. Italy beat France on penalties in the final. Zidane's headbutt on Materazzi, one of the most shocking moments in sporting history. The Teamgeist was praised for its speed and accuracy. It flew off the boot cleanly, curved predictably, and gave players more confidence to attempt long-range shots. The tournament had more spectacular long-range goals than almost any other World Cup. Section 5. The Jabulani Era and the Science Wars, 2010 to 2014. 2010 South Africa. The Jabulani, the most controversial ball ever. We have arrived at the most controversial ball in World Cup history, South Africa. 2010. The Jabulani. Jabulani means celebrate in Zulu. What happened instead was a celebration of goalkeeper suffering. The Jabulani had 8 thermally bonded panels, down from 14 on the Teamgeist, and almost no seams compared to traditional balls. Adidas claimed this made it perfectly round and aerodynamically superior. The truth was more complicated. The Jabulani had a phenomenon called knuckling, where the ball would travel in a completely unpredictable flight path. No swerve, no curve, just random deviation. A shot aimed at the left post might end up at the right post. A cross meant to go near the penalty spot might dip suddenly and go over everyone. This happened because of the reduced seam pattern. Traditional balls with more panels and more seams create a predictable aerodynamic environment. The ball rotates, the seams create consistent airflow, and the ball curves in ways that players and goalkeepers can anticipate. The Jabulani, with its near-perfect roundness and minimal seams, created chaos. England goalkeeper Robert Green dropped a tame shot from Clint Dempsey into his own net. Goalkeeper after goalkeeper was made to look foolish. World-class goalkeepers with decades of experience were beaten by balls they simply could not read. Roberto Carlos, one of the greatest free-kick takers in football history, called the Jabulani a ball for the beach. Iker Casillas, who won the World Cup with Spain in 2010, said the ball was impossible. Gianluigi Buffon called it a supernatural ball. FIFA commissioned independent aerodynamic tests at NASA's wind tunnels facility. The results confirmed what everyone already knew. The Jabulani had significantly more unpredictable flight characteristics than previous World Cup balls. Spain won the tournament playing possession football, tiki-taka, a style that minimized the need for long-range shooting and crossing. It is almost impossible to ignore the coincidence. The team that won the Jabulani World Cup was the team that was least reliant on the ball doing predictable things in the air. SU 2014, Brazil, the Brazuca Brazil 2014. The home nation hosts the World Cup for the first time since 1950. Germany wins 7-1 against Brazil in the semifinal, one of the most shocking results in football history. The ball, the Brazuca, Adidas had learned their lesson. The Brazuca went back to 6 panels, but these panels were asymmetric, interlocking, and covered with a textured surface designed to improve aerodynamic stability. The name itself was voted on by Brazilian fans. Brazuca is Brazilian slang for the Brazilian way of life. Players and goalkeepers universally praise the Brazuca. It was fast, it was predictable, it curved beautifully, and it felt good on the boot. James Rodriguez of Colombia scored a spectacular volleyed goal against Uruguay using the Brazuca. It is widely considered one of the best World Cup goals ever scored. And the ball's clean flight made the moment even more beautiful. The Brazuca is considered by many players and coaches to be the best World Cup ball of the modern era. Section 6. The Technology Race 2018-22, 2018 Russia, the Telstar 18 Russia 2018, and Adidas brings back a name from the past, the Telstar 18, a tribute to the original 1970 Telstar, but built with 2018 technology. Black and silver geometric panels on a white background, echoing the original black and white design, but underneath the aesthetic homage was cutting-edge engineering. The Telstar 18 had a new NFC, near-field communication chip embedded inside it, the first World Cup ball with built-in technology. Fans could tap their phone against the ball to unlock digital content. It was a gimmick, but it pointed toward a future where the ball itself would be a data collection device. Aerodynamically, the Telstar 18 was stable and well-received, but it had one notable issue. It became slightly slippery when wet. Several goalkeepers complained about the ball's behavior in rainy conditions. France won the tournament. Kylian Mbappé announced himself to the world. The Telstar 18 carried his brilliance, so 2022, Qatar. The Al Rihla and Al Hilm Qatar 2022 was the first World Cup in the Middle East, and it came with two balls. The Al Rihla, meaning the journey in Arabic, was the match ball for the group stage and knockout rounds. And the Al Hilm, meaning the dream, was used for the semifinals and final. The Al Rihla was built with sustainable materials for the first time in World Cup history, water-based inks and glues. A more environmentally conscious approach to production. FIFA was responding to growing pressure about the carbon footprint of the World Cup, but more importantly, the Al Rihla was designed to be the fastest World Cup ball ever made. 20 panels, a new foam layer, and a surface texture that Adidas claimed created better aerodynamics at high speeds. Players reported that long-range shots and crosses moved faster than ever before. Goalkeepers had less time to react, and indeed, Qatar 2022 produced some stunning long-range goals. Argentina won the tournament. Lionel Messi finally lifted the World Cup. He did it holding the Al Hilm, the dream ball. The symbolism was impossible to miss. Section 7. The science behind the ball. Why does ball design actually matter? Let's step back for a moment and think about this scientifically. A football in flight is subject to four forces: gravity pulling it down, drag slowing it forward, lift pushing it up or sideways, and the Magnus effect, the curve created by the ball's spin. When a player hits a free kick with a curve, they are deliberately using the Magnus effect. The spinning ball creates a pressure differential, more air pressure on one side than the other, and the ball curves toward the low-pressure side. The number of panels, the depth of the seams, the texture of the surface, and the weight of the ball all affect how these four forces interact. More panels and deeper seams create more aerodynamic turbulence around the ball, but a more predictable flight path. Because the ball's irregularities are consistent, fewer panels and smoother surfaces create less turbulence, but an unpredictable flight path. Because tiny variations in how the ball is struck create disproportionate effects on its flight. This is exactly why the Jabulani was so controversial. Its near-perfect smoothness meant that even tiny imperfections in how it left the boot created massive, unpredictable deviations in flight. The Brazuca's solution was elegant. Keep the panel count low for speed, but add surface texture and asymmetric panel shapes to reintroduce consistent aerodynamic behavior. Section 8. The cultural designs, a football as art, how each ball reflects its host nation. It is worth pausing to appreciate something that often gets lost in the technical discussions. Every World Cup ball since 1970 has been a cultural artifact, a designed object that carries the identity of its host nation. The Azteca in 1986 Mexico, Aztec geometric patterns pressed into a football. A civilization that existed centuries before the modern world, represented on the most watched sporting event in history, the Tricolore in 1998 France, the colors of the French flag. Expressed in a design language borrowed from modern art movements, the Favor Nova in 2002 Japan, Korea, Asian artistic traditions meeting Western sports manufacturing, the Brazuca in 2014 Brazil, named by the Brazilian people. Carrying the energy of a nation that lives and breathes football, The Al Rihla in 2022 Qatar. Arabic calligraphy, desert colors, and the geometry of Islamic art. These are not just sporting equipment. They are diplomatic objects. They say, "This is who we are. This is our world. Welcome." And when Pelé struck the Telstar in 1970, when Maradona curved the Azteca in 1986, when Ronaldo headed the Tricolore in 1998, when Messi lifted the Al Hilm in 2022, they were not just playing football, they were writing history with the specific object of their time. Section 9. The future of the World Cup ball, what comes next? The 2026 World Cup will be held across the United States, Canada, and Mexico, the largest World Cup in history, with 48 teams for the first time. Adidas will design a new ball. They always do, but what will it look like? What will it do? We already know some of the technology that is coming. Smart balls with accelerometers and gyroscopes that track spin rate, velocity, and position in real time. Balls that can communicate with goal line technology and VR systems instantly. Balls that generate data on every single touch in every single match. We may be approaching a World Cup where the ball itself is a computer, where every goal is confirmed not by a camera angle but by the ball itself sending a signal that it crossed the line. And yet, whatever technology goes inside it, the ball will still need to behave predictably. Players will still need to curve it, drive it, float it, and control it. The fundamental demands have not changed since 1930, from a leather ball that two nations argued about in 1930, to a GPS-enabled smart ball in 2026. From a black and white design built for television cameras to a sustainable, culturally specific work of art, from a ball that injured players who headed it in the rain to a ball that produces data points on every single touch. The World Cup ball is never just a ball. It is a mirror of the technology, the culture, the commerce, and the science of its time. It carries every great goal, every missed penalty, every moment of heartbreak and joy that has ever happened in this tournament. The next time you watch a World Cup match, really watch the ball. Watch how it curves, how it dips, how it moves through the air. Because somebody spent years engineering that flight. A team of designers spent months deciding what it should look like. And Adidas and FIFA spent decades learning, sometimes painfully, what a World Cup ball needs to be. It is the most watched object in the world, and most people never think about it at all. Now you do.